Add another prosecutor to the list that includes names like Kim Fox and Larry Krasner, the list of non-prosecution decarceration prosecutors in metropolitan areas around the country. Mary Moriarty is the Hennepin County Hennepin County attorney, so that's Minneapolis. Mm-hmm.
St. Paul.
Interestingly, she was the longtime public defender there, so now it seems like she's trying to do from the inside what she was doing from the outside. Listen to how she described the problem of crime.
I heard this
in a Zoom call. We talk about it because people are talking about it in metropolitan areas because people are experiencing it, and just as of recently, they're experiencing it like they haven't in 3 decades. And on a lot of counts, including a lot of counts of violent crime, they're still experiencing it like they haven't experienced in 3 decades in places like Chicago. But here's a good example of the left's perspective on it.
There is a concerted effort to make people afraid of crime. And I have heard over and over and over various forms of super predator, which I had hoped we left behind in the 90s, but we haven't. I hear it all the time when we're talking about young people, young Black youth, frankly, who are at risk and involved in, behaviors that we would wish they weren't, but we kind of understand why they are. So there's a lot of fear in politics. There are a lot of people in power who want to remain in power that are afraid of losing those positions of power by not supporting police or criticizing police.
That's your prosecuting attorney in Minneapolis.
Dear Lord.
You don't use terms, here, I mean, it's basically, say justice impacted individual. Don't use the term super predator. Okay, what should we call somebody who's been arrested, 50 times, including for multiple violent crimes, as we have many examples in New York and Chicago? We call them a repeatedly justice impacted individual. And it's all fear porn. This is the other argument. It's all fear porn. We're just engaged in making people afraid. It's not actually just reflecting what you're hearing from the populaces you were elected to represent. Okay. Well, that's one approach. That's one philosophy. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Jim Glasgow, who's the Will County State's attorney. Jim, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it. Jim?
Jim, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, got you now.
Right.
So that attitude. I mean, you have to run across it too, including in your professional circles. That what the real problem is. There is an effort afoot to make people afraid of crime, as opposed to sort of people being authentically afraid of an increase in crime in the communities in which they live, in and around they live.
Well, I think if anyone watches the news in Chicago, nobody has to make you afraid of the drive-by shootings that are on a daily basis. What, the last weekend, 30 shootings, 7 murders. I can't even imagine being a prosecutor with that kind of caseload piling up day after day. Will County is a very safe county. We're adjacent to Cook County, but we make certain that violent offenders know that they're going to be subject to the prosecution that's appropriate. I also have diversion courts, Dan, the best diversion courts in the state of Illinois. So we don't just punish, we look to rehabilitate, but we're sensible in the way we do it.
And I mean, we talked a lot in 2022 into 2023 about the Safety Act version 1.0, which you frankly deserve a lot of credit for bringing it to the public's attention. And then it became Safety Act 2.0 that was actually passed into law after the 22 election, modified a bit. So since it's been in effect, what's been the real world impact for Will County? I mean, that's a populous county with 700,000 people. And so you've got to I assume you notice if there is a difference in the way that the prosecutor's office works and what you're able to do and what you're not able to do, new challenges that may be presented in terms of enhancing public safety there.
Well, the one thing that the lawsuit did that I've never really had a chance to explain to the public because I was dismissed as Glasgow-esque rhetoric, but the two things that really drove my lawsuit were the fact that there were two provisions that after 90 days, no matter what crime you committed, you shall not be denied pretrial release. So if you murdered 50 people, the prosecutor would have to get on his horse and get a trial ready in 90 days, which would be impossible. That person would have been released. And then they took away the judge's authority, not discretion. It took their authority away to issue a warrant when that murderer didn't appear in court. So now he's loose, and I can't even get him back in court. That's what we were facing. And I have to give Natalie Manley, who's our local state rep, we went to her and said, look, we've got to change these two provisions. And she was instrumental in that renegotiation after the election where we got it changed. And so, without that, Dan, we wouldn't have survived. But we are surviving. We've got real good judges here in Will County, and they work with us. They understand what's going on. That clear and convincing standard, they're very happy to find it. It goes up to the appellate court. The appellate court has not overturned one detention that we've had. And so I've added 10 attorneys, got a pay raise through for the attorneys because of the increased workload. And we're doing pretty well here. But there's still a number of things that need to be amended.
Well, like what? Can you give me an example or us an example?
Yes. There's three things. We got the 90 days tied into Section 103-5, which deals with the 120-day speedy trial. And we need to get rid of the 90 days and just make the 120-day speedy trial we've always had. That section also provides 60-day continuance for exigent circumstances and 120-day continuance for DNA. We can live with that. We got to get rid of that silly, clear and convincing. We prove beyond a reasonable doubt when we go to trial, but it's probable cause before that. And those are the very simple changes. And then the judge has to have discretion based on prior criminal history. Burglary right now is not detainable. One of my investigators looked into his garage and saw a burglar in his garage. He arrested him. Turns out the guy had been arrested 35 times, been to prison 3 times. Within a week, he was immediately released because he couldn't be detained. And a week later, he does another burglary. I mean, that's just an example of the kind of stuff that's going on under the current here that eventually the volume is going to kill us.
Mm. Yeah, no, I mean, that's what we're hearing elsewhere as well. But it's interesting to get that perspective. And yet, in response to the protestations over the original iteration of the Safety Act and the continuing substantive critiques of the existing version, we have the same legislators who brought us Safety Act 1.0 and begrudgingly 2.0. Like Justin Slaughter proposing to eliminate all traffic stops. We have legislation to increase the number of no-show court dates, not showing up for your court date, from 1 time to 3 times before the possibility of a license suspension. What do you think of those proposals?
Well, they're patently absurd, and obviously Mr. Slaughter pulled his bill back within a matter of days when there was, thankfully, a huge outcry from law enforcement. He basically was shredding the rules of the road. This would go far beyond, criminal acts. We'd have unsafe vehicles everywhere you look. There'd be accidents and deaths on the road that were absolutely preventable. And there seems to be an obsession from Mr. Slaughter and his group about people being stopped unjustly, but they don't seem to care about the people being murdered unjustly. The police have to have tools in order to stop those murders, and they want to take all those tools away. That makes no sense.
I wanted to get your reaction to a story that we talked about a little bit earlier in the show. This was in Western Springs. Western Springs police caught at least 12 Venezuelan immigrants illegal immigrants casing the streets in Western Springs. They stole one bike parked in front of a gym. They were checking out kids' bikes near a pool to see if they were locked. Police confront the group. They retrieve the stolen bike. None of the Venezuelans had ID. None of them spoke English. Western Springs police called the Grange police to assist with translation. Sources present said police told them they weren't going to bother arresting or charging the illegal aliens because, quote, they have no way of verifying who they actually are, and they wouldn't show up for court anyway. So police put the illegal immigrants on a metro train heading east towards Chicago rather than arrest and process them. Riverside, former Riverside police chief, retired Riverside police chief Tom Weitzel said, the officer's statements in this story reflect the results of the Safety Act. How's that working? What's your reaction to that story?
Well, again, the immigration issue is catastrophic for this country. You know, we've got citizens of the United States who are suffering with disabilities, poverty, not having enough to eat, no place to live, and we completely ignore them and then start allocating hundreds of millions of dollars for people that are here improperly. And it's like, what in the world are our priorities? Obviously, there's theories, political theories, why those people were brought here, but this has got, I mean, we've got 8 million people that have come into the country. We don't know where they are. When they came across the border, they're wearing a T-shirt and jeans. And if you're telling me you vet somebody under those circumstances, they don't have any papers, no fingerprints to run, how are you vetting anybody? So in Will County, we're not going to do that. We would arrest those people and do our best to prosecute them. But it does create ridiculous barriers when you have no identification.
Well, right, but we can't have communities. like we're not going to process them, so we're going to make we're not going to arrest them for committing crimes other than being here illegally. So we'll just make them somebody else's problem. We could have that going back and forth all over the place in this sanctuary state.
Yes.
Yes.
We've invited.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
But we invited them here, Dan.
I know we did.
Yeah.
I know we did. That's absolutely right.
They were celebrated last night, and we bought them dinner. Brandon Johnson, welcome to your new home. We hope your kids come here, and you have your grandkids come here.
No, but it's just what is law enforcement going to do? I mean, law enforcement still has to do their job, even though the politicians are making their job that much more difficult. You can't just pass them on to Chicago. What if Chicago wants to pass on their people to Western Springs? How's Western Springs going to react? Somebody has to draw some lines, don't they? And I was interested by Weitzel's comment. This is the result of the Safety Act, because and I assume what he's saying is because we know we can't detain them for any period of time to find out who they are,
and they're not going to come back for the court hearing.
And what else they might be responsible for. For example, we know we can't work with ICE because we're a sanctuary state. So I understand why Western Springs police say their hands are tied, but still this sort of externality that's created by the hand tying of police is something that I think needs to be leveled up for larger discussion.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Dan, because seriously, with the Safety Act, trying to detain these people would be very difficult. And then once you release them, where are they going to go? You don't have an address, you don't have a phone number, you don't have, their fingerprints aren't on file. Lots of luck trying to get them back into court.
Do you have illegals living there in Will County? Do you have any shelters?
Very few. I'm not going to say we don't have any, but very few. Joliet made it clear they're not a sanctuary city. And so that avoided, there was an $8 million grant that was returned. So that didn't happen. And so, no, we don't really have a problem here yet. Again, these are human beings, and it's terrible that this is happening this way. It shouldn't be happening this way. Everything's being, I watched constituents begging the mayor of Chicago to quit giving money to people that are here under this process because their neighborhoods are suffering and they need the money. The next day, 70 million went the wrong way. It's nobody's listening.
Jim Glasgow, Will County State's Attorney. And Jim, I mean, you're a Democrat. In case people forgot, and people may not recognize this rhetoric coming from a Democrat, but I mean, how are you treated inside the party in this state?
Well, I'm a 1992 Democrat. Um, so I'm an American. I believe in fairness and justice. If you ask anybody on either side of the aisle down here, they'll tell you I'm fair. I administer the law in a very fair manner, and that's what every state's attorney should do. So it's public safety is my main priority, Dan. And when you're doing that, you're going to probably run afoul of both parties at times.
Jim Glasgow, Will County State's Attorney. Jim, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Are you turning 65 and thinking about Medicare? Or are you over 65 and haven't enrolled yet because you still have coverage at work? Either way, Medicare done correctly will be the best health insurance you will ever have. Imagine having an annual deductible of only $240. There are only two good things about aging, wisdom and Medicare. But to navigate the Medicare maze properly, you need a mentor. Best part, my guidance costs you nothing. Call me. I can help.
If you're tired of calling a bureaucrat at an 800 number to help you navigate Medicare, then you need a local expert on your side, your own health insurance mentor. C. Stephen Tucker from healthinsurancementors.com is someone I know and trust. He's a 30-year licensed broker who's been educating our listeners for more than a decade. Steve, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Thanks, Dan. They can visit healthinsurancementors.com or call me directly at 630-674-1551. That's 630-674-1551.
All right. Dan, I'm trying to do a live read over here. He's like one of those kids. He's glued to his cell phone. Here to talk about balance of nature, because remember, in the summer months when you're eating those hot dogs, brats, and burgers and beer, they don't provide fruits and vegetables your body desperately needs every day to stay healthy and energized. That's why I've been taking Balance of Nature for nearly a decade. It's so easy to open up the individual capsules and